What if the heaviest burden you are carrying right now is simply your refusal to let a chapter close? Have you ever noticed the strange kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to keep things exactly as they were? There is a deep, quiet ache in standing at the edge of a changing season, desperately wishing the leaves would stay on the trees. When a relationship fades, when a career shifts, when a period of life you loved slips through your fingers, the mind naturally rebels. We grip tighter. We look backward. We spend our energy trying to rebuild a house that has already been taken down by the wind. If you have ever felt stuck, anxious, exhausted, or lost in the face of an ending, this is for you. Most of your suffering right now is not caused by the fact that your life is shifting. It is caused by how tightly you are holding on to the version of your life that has already passed. Buddhist wisdom teaches a profound truth about this very pain. It reminds us that nothing in the physical or emotional world is built to last forever. In Buddhist thought, the root of human sorrow is not change itself, but our desperate attachment to permanence. We suffer because we demand that temporary things stay forever. We build our homes on the ice of winter and then weep when the spring sun begins to melt the foundation. Imagine standing in the middle of a powerful, flowing river. The water is cool and clear, moving with a natural grace toward the ocean. Now, imagine reaching down and trying to grab the water, trying to hold it in your hands so it will not leave you. The tighter you squeeze your fists, the faster the water escapes. And while you are fighting to hold on to that single handful of water, standing frozen in the current, you are missing the beauty of the entire river flowing past you. This is exactly what we do in our own lives. We lose a connection with someone and spend months replaying old conversations, trying to find the exact moment things shifted. We lose a role that defined us, and we wander through our days feeling completely empty, believing our worth was tied to that single phase of life. We cling to old versions of people, old versions of ourselves, and old comforts, trying to force a locked door to simply swing open again. Ask yourself, what are you still holding on to? What season is clearly over, but you are still showing up every day dressed for the weather of yesterday? Are you fighting the natural flow of your own life? Stop, breathe. Observe the feeling of loss without letting it become your entire identity. You are allowed to grieve the end of a beautiful season. You are allowed to feel the chill of the transition, but you do not have to fight the calendar of your life. Let the feeling rise, acknowledge its presence, and gently release the outcome, because peace is not something you chase. It is not something you can trap in a jar to keep forever. Peace is something you make space for by finally opening your hands. But letting go of what once was is only the first step. Understanding why we are so terrified of this shift is what brings true comfort. And this is where the next truth begins. Here is a truth that goes against everything the modern world teaches us. Nothing in this life was ever designed to be permanent. Not the joy, not the sorrow, not the people we meet, and not the versions of ourselves we inhabit. When life feels safe, when we finally reach a place of comfort or find a rhythm that makes us happy, our first instinct is to build a wall around it. We want to freeze time. We expect our friendships to remain identical over decades. We expect the people we love to never change, to never pull away, and to never outgrow the spaces they once fit perfectly inside. And when the season inevitably shifts, when a job ends, a child grows up, or a deep connection slowly fades into silence, we feel betrayed. We feel as though a promise has been broken. We feel as though something was unfairly stolen from us. But Buddhist wisdom offers a deeply liberating perspective. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is the reality of impermanence. Everything is in a constant state of arising and passing away. We are taught that the illusion of permanence is the quiet architect of our deepest sorrows. We are not suffering because life is moving forward. We are suffering because we have convinced ourselves that things were supposed to stand still. Imagine a vast, open sky. Throughout the day, clouds drift across it. Some are light, warm, and golden, reflecting the morning sun. Others are dark, heavy, and turbulent, carrying the weight of a violent storm. But the sky never tries to hold onto the beautiful clouds, nor does it panic when the dark clouds appear. It simply provides the space for them to exist, and eventually to pass. The sky does not resist. It knows that the clouds are not the sky. Think about how often we try to capture the clouds. We experience a beautiful chapter in our lives, and immediately a quiet anxiety creeps in. We begin worrying about when it will end, or, when a chapter does close, we refuse to let the cloud drift away. We scroll through old messages, we replay past memories, and we torture ourselves by comparing our current reality to a ghost of the past. We spend so much energy mourning the end of a season that we become entirely disconnected from the ground beneath our feet. Ask yourself, how much of your current exhaustion comes from pretending that something temporary was supposed to last forever? What would happen if you simply allowed this past chapter to be exactly what it was? A beautiful, fleeting experience instead of a permanent possession you have lost? Pause. Breathe. Notice the heavy expectation you have placed on the world to remain unchanged. Let the feeling of loss rise without making it your enemy. You do not have to conquer the sadness of an ending. You simply have to stop fighting the reality that the ending has arrived. Letting go of the illusion of permanence does not mean we do not care. It means we care deeply, but with open hands. It means we can finally love the season we are in, without the fear of it ending. But accepting that things change is often easier said than done, because the moment we try to release our grip, our mind begins to panic. And this is where the quiet agony of holding on truly begins. 3. The suffering of clinging. What if the pain you feel right now is not the pain of the ending, but the friction of your own resistance? Here is the truth few people want to face. The tighter you hold onto something that is meant to leave, the more you suffer. When a season of life draws to a close, our instinct is to fight it. We believe that if we just try a little harder, if we analyze what went wrong, if we compromise a little more of our self-respect, we can force the situation back to what it was. We send that one extra message, hoping for the warmth we used to receive. We stay in environments that drain our spirit, terrified of the empty space that might follow if we walk away. We replay old conversations in the dark, convinced that if we just find the right words or figure out where we failed, we can rewind the clock. Buddhism reminds us that there is a vast difference between love and attachment. Love appreciates the beauty of the flower. Attachment tries to uproot it and put it in a box to keep forever. In Buddhist thought, the deepest source of our agony is not that things end. The source is our clinging. We attach our entire sense of identity, safety, and joy to a very specific outcome. We tell ourselves that we can only be whole if this person stays, or that we are only worthy if this phase of our life continues. And by doing so, we turn our own peace into a hostage. Imagine holding a handful of fine, dry sand. If you hold it gently in a relaxed, open palm, the sand rests there peacefully. But the moment you become afraid of losing it, the moment you panic, clench your fist, and squeeze tightly, the sand immediately begins slipping through your fingers. The harder you fight to control it, the faster it pours away, leaving your hand cramped, exhausted, and completely empty. Think about your own life. Think about the relationships you have tried to force. Think about how often you compare your current reality to the way things used to be, or how you look at social media and feel entirely left behind. We squeeze the sand of our lives so tightly, terrified of losing control, terrified of being alone, terrified of the unknown. But in all that gripping, we lose the very essence of the life we are trying to save. The effort to control the outcome becomes the very thing that destroys our peace. Ask yourself, what are you afraid will happen if you finally let go? Who are you without this struggle? Is this endless mental wrestling bringing you peace, or is it simply feeding your fear? Stop. Breathe. Look at what you are so desperately holding on to. You do not have to chase what is already leaving. You do not have to beg for a season to stay when the weather has already changed. Notice the tension in your mind and gently choose to soften your grip. Do your part, then release the outcome. Because holding on does not stop a season from ending. It only keeps you trapped in the cold, unable to see the new light. But once you realize that letting go is an act of mercy rather than a defeat, you can begin to learn from nature itself. And this is where the next truth begins. 4. The wisdom of the falling leaf. Have you ever noticed that nature never struggles to let go? Here is a truth we often forget in our chaotic modern lives. We view endings as failures. When a relationship runs its course, when a passion fades, or when a quiet phase of our life silently closes, we immediately believe something has gone terribly wrong. We feel a deep sense of guilt for outgrowing a space, or a crushing sense of abandonment when a space outgrows us. We measure our success by how long we can keep things exactly the same. We carry the heavy expectation that we must always be in bloom, always producing, always moving forward without ever taking a step back. We stay in places that slowly drain our spirit, simply because walking away feels like an admission of defeat. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look at the natural world as a mirror for our own inner reality. In Buddhism, the concept of letting go is not about giving up, nor is it about cold detachment. It is about deep alignment with the truth of the present moment. Nature understands impermanence perfectly, without the burden of ego, pride, or fear. Imagine a massive ancient tree standing on a quiet hill as autumn approaches. As the air grows cold and the light begins to shift, the tree does not panic. It does not grip its dying, brown leaves in a desperate attempt to stay green. It does not feel insecure when its branches become bare, and it certainly does not try to glue the fallen leaves back onto its stems. The tree simply withdraws its energy, letting the leaves detach and fall gently to the earth. It knows that holding on to the dead leaves would destroy its branches when the heavy winter snow arrives. By letting go, the tree survives the freeze. By letting go, it makes space for the new buds of spring. Think about how differently we handle the autumns of our own lives. When a career path suddenly feels empty, or a friendship quietly shifts into a distant memory, we do not let the leaves fall. We panic. We feel entirely behind in life. We look around at others who are still blooming. We look at the highlight reels of their lives, and we wonder why our own leaves are turning brown. We exhaust ourselves trying to keep everything alive, spending all our vital energy fighting the natural season of our own soul. We force conversations, we force connections, and we force ourselves to endure situations that are begging to be released. Ask yourself, are you carrying the heavy burden of trying to bloom in the middle of your own winter? What are you holding on to simply because you are afraid to look at your own bare branches? Stop. Breathe. Look at the changing season of your life with quiet acceptance. You do not have to fix what is simply ready to fall. Stop trying to force the door open. Let it drift away quietly. Let the feeling of bareness be a sign of rest, not a sign of ruin. Because releasing the weight of what is over is not a failure. It is the most natural, necessary survival skill of the human spirit. But standing in the cold after you have let go requires a special kind of grace. It requires a willingness to stop being so harsh with your own heart And this is where the next truth begins. 5. Finding softness in transition. What if the hardest part of an ending is not the change itself, but the harshness with which you treat yourself while it happens? Here is the truth. We are rarely gentle with our own grief. When a season of life ends, the modern world tells us to bounce back immediately. We experience a massive loss, a long-term friendship quietly fades, a career path collapses, or a period of emotional safety disappears, and we immediately expect ourselves to be fine. If we feel anxious, entirely lost, or emotionally exhausted by the transition, we judge ourselves. We call ourselves weak. We treat our minds like failing machines that need to be quickly repaired, rather than human hearts undergoing a profound, disorienting shift. We want the transition to be clean, fast, and completely painless. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that the path to peace is never forged through force, but through deep, unconditional compassion. In Buddhist thought, true mindfulness requires a radical gentleness toward our own suffering. There is a teaching about the two arrows. The first arrow is the natural pain of life, the ending of the season, the loss of the relationship, the inevitable shift. We cannot avoid the first arrow. But the second arrow is our reaction to the pain. It is our own self-criticism, our shame, our anger at ourselves for not healing faster. Buddhism asks us to simply stop shooting the second arrow. Imagine a fragile seed buried deep within the dark, heavy earth, waiting for the spring. The transition from a hard, dormant seed into a blooming sprout is not a fast or violent process. The seed does not berate itself for being covered in darkness. It does not try to aggressively force its way through the frozen soil before the temperature is right. Instead, it absorbs the moisture slowly. It softens. It allows its hard outer shell to break open gracefully. The profound growth happens precisely because the seed yields to the darkness and allows itself to be soft in a difficult, uncertain space. Think about how you handle the dark spaces in your own life. When you feel the crushing weight of loneliness on a Friday night, or when you feel entirely behind your peers in life, what do you say to yourself? You likely demand that you instantly fix it. You push down the sadness, force a smile, or distract yourself endlessly just to numb the ache. You demand a finished flower when you are currently a seed resting in the dark. By refusing to be gentle with your own transition, you are fighting the very vulnerability required to truly heal. Ask yourself, how many times today have you punished yourself for simply feeling human? Are you trying to force your heart to heal on a strict deadline? Stop. Breathe. Let the heavy armor drop for just a moment. You do not need to have the next chapter completely figured out today. Let the feeling of uncertainty exist without trying to instantly solve it. You are allowed to be a masterpiece and a work in progress. At the exact same time, offer yourself the same grace you would give a dear friend standing in the rain, because true strength is not found in how quickly you conquer your pain, but in how gently you walk through it. But to walk through it gracefully, you must first learn how to sit in the empty room that is left behind. And this is where the next truth begins. 6. Honoring the space between seasons. What if the most important chapter of your life is the blank page between two stories? Here is a truth that makes most of us incredibly uncomfortable. We are terrified of the empty space. When one season of life ends, when the job is over, when the relationship is gone, when a deeply familiar routine suddenly disappears, we immediately panic if we do not know what is coming next. We hate the waiting. We cannot tolerate the silence. So, what do? We desperately rush to fill the void. We jump into new relationships before our hearts have healed. We take on massive amounts of work stress just to feel productive. We scroll endlessly through our screens, to drown out the quiet ache of being alone in a silent house. We try to sprint out of our own winter, terrified that if we stop moving, we will simply be left behind. Buddhist wisdom teaches a deeply beautiful lesson about this very emptiness. In modern life, we are taught that empty space is a bad thing. We view it as a lack, a failure, or a sign of being incomplete. But in Buddhist thought, emptiness is not a void of nothingness. It is a space of infinite potential. It is the fertile, quiet ground from which all new things naturally arise. Buddhism reminds us that the pause between the exhalation and the next inhalation is exactly what keeps us alive. Imagine a beautifully crafted, quiet room. If the room is packed to the ceiling with old furniture, heavy boxes, and endless clutter, it loses its purpose. No one can enter. Nothing new can be brought inside. The true value of the room is not found in the walls, but in the empty space within them. It is the emptiness that makes the room a place of rest, a place of possibility, a place to simply be. Or think of the profound silence of winter. The earth often appears completely bare and frozen, but beneath the heavy frost, in that dark, quiet space, the roots are resting, the soil is regenerating. Winter is not the death of the year. It is the silent, necessary pause that makes the brilliant bloom of spring possible. Think about the quiet rooms in your own life. When the messages stop coming, when the calendar is suddenly clear, when you are forced to sit alone with your own thoughts on a Sunday afternoon, you likely feel a surge of anxiety. You feel the heavy pressure to succeed, to be doing something, to be constantly seen. You view this transition period as a lonely waiting room you are trapped in, rather than a sacred sanctuary designed for your deep rest. You are so busy trying to fill the room with noise that you completely miss the peace of the open space. Ask yourself, why does the silence scare you so much? What are you running from when you desperately try to fill the space between seasons? Stop. Breathe. Let the emptiness simply be empty for a moment. You do not have to immediately know what comes next. You do not need to rush into the next chapter just to prove you are moving forward. Sit quietly in the space between seasons and allow yourself to simply exist without producing, without performing, without predicting. Because peace is not found by rushing blindly toward the next destination. It is found by making peace with the pause. But to truly stand comfortably in this open space, you must finally stop looking over your shoulder, and this is where the next truth begins. 7. The freedom of non-attachment. What if the very thing you believe is keeping you safe is exactly what is keeping you trapped? Here is the truth about human nature. We find deep comfort in the familiar, even if the familiar is causing us profound pain. When a season of life ends, we often keep looking over our shoulder. We believe that if we just hold on to the memory tightly enough, we will not lose the piece of ourselves that lived in that chapter. We quietly monitor the lives of people who are no longer in our daily circle. We cling to old resentments because they feel like a heavy shield against future betrayal. We build an invisible cage out of our own memories, convinced that the past is the only place we will ever truly be safe. We think that letting go means we are erasing the love, the effort, or the truth of what happened. But Buddhist wisdom offers a radical redefinition of safety. It introduces us to the profound freedom of non-attachment. In the modern world, we often misunderstand non-attachment. We think it means becoming cold, distant, or completely numb. We think it means we stop caring. But in true Buddhist thought, non-attachment is the absolute highest form of love and respect. It means you love a person, a place, or a moment so much that you allow it to simply be what it is, without demanding that it belong to you forever. You experience the beauty of the world without trying to lock it in a cage. Imagine a small wooden boat tied securely to a wooden dock. On a calm summer day, The thick rope keeps the boat safe and grounded. But when a fierce storm rolls in, the sky darkens, and the tide begins to surge. That same rope becomes a fatal hazard. As the rough water rises and falls violently, the tight rope aggressively slams the boat against the hard wooden dock. If the boat remains rigidly tied, it will eventually shatter under the pressure of the storm. The only way for the boat to survive the massive, turbulent waves is to untie the rope. By letting go of the dock, the boat can rise and fall gracefully with the water. The storm is still happening, but the boat is no longer fighting the current. It is safe because it finally moves with the tide. Think about the heavy ropes you are still gripping in your own life. You are tied to a past relationship, replaying what went wrong until your heart is utterly battered. You are tied to an old, comfortable version of yourself, entirely paralyzed by the fear of failure. As you step into a new, unfamiliar role, you are tied to the unfairness of a family conflict, refusing to let go of the anger, because you falsely believe that moving on means the other person wins. You are taking on heavy water simply because you refuse to untie the knot. You are letting the changing tides destroy your peace, not because the water is too rough, but because you will not let go of the dock. Ask yourself, what dock are you still violently tied to? Are you choosing the pain of holding on simply because you are terrified of floating into the unknown? Stop, breathe. Look gently at the heavy rope in your hands. You do not have to keep fighting the water. You are not giving up by letting go. You are simply allowing your spirit to survive the storm. Untie the knot. Let the feeling of release wash over you without fear. Let life move you forward, because true freedom is not found in controlling the tides. It is found in trusting your ability to float. But to float securely in the current, you must stop living in the past and finally feel the water beneath you today. And this is where the next truth begins. 8. Grounding yourself in the present moment. What if the only place you can ever truly find peace is the exact place you are trying so desperately to escape? Here is a deeply uncomfortable truth. When a season of life ends, we split our minds in two, and we leave the present moment entirely empty. Half of our energy remains trapped in the past, replaying old memories, mourning what is gone, and wishing things had turned out differently. The other half races frantically into the unknown future, obsessing over what will happen next. We worry about how we will survive, if we will ever find our footing again, or if we are falling hopelessly behind in life. We run on an endless treadmill of mental exhaustion, trying to solve tomorrow's imaginary problems with today's entirely depleted mind. Buddhist wisdom gently pulls us back from this agonizing time travel. It teaches us that the present moment is the only true reality we ever possess. In Buddhist thought, anxiety is often the result of leaving the now. We suffer deeply because we abandon the only place where we actually have power. True mindfulness is not about forcing your mind to be perfectly blank. It is simply the gentle, repetitive act of bringing your awareness back home. It is finding softness in the very space you are standing in right now, even if that space feels uncertain. Imagine a strong, heavy tree standing in the middle of a swirling storm. The wind howls, the rain beats down, and the upper branches sway violently in the turbulent air. If the tree's awareness was entirely in its highest leaves, it would feel completely out of control, entirely at the mercy of the violent sky. But the tree's true strength is in its roots, buried deep in the dark, silent earth. No matter how wildly the storm rages above, the ground beneath remains entirely steady. The tree does not survive by fighting the wind. It survives by sinking its awareness deeper into the quiet, motionless earth. Think about your own chaotic, anxious days. You wake up and immediately flood your mind with the noise of the world, checking your phone and comparing your messy reality to the curated lives of others. You sit in a quiet room, but your mind is miles away, agonizing over a faded friendship or stressing over a situation you cannot control. Your awareness is caught entirely in the violent branches of the storm. You are completely disconnected from the solid ground beneath your feet. You are missing the simple, quiet safety of the exact moment you are living in, simply because you are too busy fighting ghosts. Ask yourself, where is your mind at this exact second? Are you actually here, or are you wandering through the ruins of yesterday and the imaginary battlefields of tomorrow? Stop, breathe, feel the solid ground beneath your feet. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest. You do not have to figure out the rest of your life today. You do not have to have all the answers for a future that has not yet arrived. You only have to breathe through this single, quiet moment. Let go of the branches and gently bring your awareness back to the root, because you cannot step peacefully into a new beginning if you are never truly present to take the first step. But as the storm of transition finally begins to clear, a quiet, beautiful realization slowly washes over you. And this is where the final truth begins. 9. Stepping into the new dawn. What if the ending you have been fighting so hard to prevent is actually the quiet beginning your soul desperately needed? Think back to the heavy exhaustion we spoke about at the very beginning. That deep, quiet ache of standing at the edge of a changing season, desperately wishing you could command the leaves to stay on the trees. For so long, you believed that if a relationship faded, if a chapter closed, or if a deeply familiar comfort slipped away, you were losing a vital piece of yourself. You carried the crushing weight of trying to keep the world perfectly still, terrified of what would happen if you finally stopped managing the outcome. But you know the truth now. The river of life will always flow. The clouds will always drift across the open sky, and trying to freeze the water or force the heavy doors of the past to stay open will only ever break your own heart. Accepting that a season of life is over is not a tragedy, and it is certainly not a failure. It is an act of profound self-respect. It means you finally trust yourself enough to stand in the quiet, bare winter of transition, knowing completely that you will bloom again when the time is right. You do not have to cling to the ghost of who you were to be worthy today. You do not need the validation of a past relationship, a closed chapter, or an old identity to prove that you are whole. By embracing the reality of impermanence, you are no longer a prisoner to your own memories. You have learned the true, quiet freedom of non-attachment. You have learned that inner peace is found not by desperately controlling the storm, but by sinking your roots deeply into the only place that is real, the present moment. Trust that the empty space you have bravely cleared is finally making room for a peace you could not have imagined while you were so busy fighting. Presence is the ultimate gift you can give your tired spirit. When you are fully here, fully grounded in this exact breath, the fear of tomorrow quietly dissolves. Imagine stepping out of a dark, cold house into the soft, golden light of an early dawn. The air is sharp and clean. The world around you is entirely still. The heavy, exhausting baggage you were dragging around yesterday has finally been left at the door. You are simply breathing. You are no longer demanding that life strictly match a comfortable, outdated blueprint. You are no longer gripping the sand until your hands cramp. You are soft. You are open. You are finally ready to let the new season unfold at its own natural, beautiful pace. Ask yourself one final time, are you ready to stop fighting the calendar of your own life? Are you ready to let the changing weather simply wash over you? Stop, breathe. Look at how far you have come. You have survived every ending you thought would entirely break you. You have stood in the empty room and realized the silence will not destroy you. You are safe. The unknown is not a dark void to be feared. It is the wide, open sky waiting for you to simply exist within it, without the heavy armor you used to wear. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now,